Our mission is very clear. Uh, Create ethical workplaces that gives a voice to all. Hi there, I'm Nathan DeLuca, the co-founder of Your Call, one of Australia's largest independent whistleblowing providers. We provide organisations the ability to provide their employees, stakeholders and their customers an anonymous, safe, speak-up channel to report concerns and wrongdoing. Being a certified B Corp was built into our DNA since the beginning of our organisation, and it is an absolute privilege to be nominated for the 2021 Best for the World customer segment in the value and the impact that we provide the community and our customers.
I'd love to hear from you, I guess, the inspiration for co-founding Your Call and the gap in the market that you saw in the whistleblowing space.
Whistleblowing is a taboo topic. However, we saw an opportunity to provide a compassionate service that was trauma-informed, that was humanistic, that facilitated a conversation from an individual at an organisation to be able to speak up about a wrongdoing or a concern without judgment, without fear, and to get that into the hands of the people at the organisation who can do something about it. Our model allows there to be an opportunity for the individual and the organisation to forge ongoing communication through a range of tools that we have in a psychologically safe manner that leads to better resolutions, that leads to a higher number of issues, and it leads to holding both the organisation at a high ethical standard and holds the individual accountable for the evidence and information they've provided to ensure that everyone moves forward with a resolution mindset.
People who are making, I guess, whistleblowing statements are quite vulnerable from their employer, but also in other ways. So tell us a little bit about how that came to be and the steps that you've taken to make that your product safe.
At the end of the day, this is a group or collection of human beings coexisting in a hierarchy of an organisation, hopefully with the same goal. So it seemed nonsensical to us to ostracise them, to treat them badly and cause detriment, to cut their career away from them and their pursuits. No one would agree that that's a good idea, but for some reason it continues to happen. We know factually that people are in a heightened sense of stress when they've seen wrongdoing, either as a bystander or as a victim survivor of a scenario. Your Call isn't a silver bullet to that solution, but being aware of it and helping provide resources to organisations and connections to third parties to both elicit the information that's useful, help the organisation with a remediation or review plan, and to help the individual gain access to the necessary resources and the safety to feel confident that they're not going to be victimised in speaking up is critically important.
So tell me about some of the cultural changes you've seen.
The model and the concept was very difficult to gain traction. There was no legislation or very poor legislation and standards supporting the concept as a whole in terms of protections and governance frameworks for organisations to follow. And organisations basically didn't trust their people to speak up anonymously. So that belief was difficult to change. However, there are a range of, market forces or environmental forces that change that. There's also new legislation under the Corporations Act that provides very rigorous protections for whistleblowers. Also, a new ISO guideline is coming out for organisations to use and align to for a best practice whistleblower management system. So moving from us being in a policy in a drawer, no one really knowing about us whatsoever, we are now working with organisations in fully integrated speak up brands. It's there for good. It outlives us, it outlives the CEO and the people there. It is how they do business now. That has been a huge cultural change.
Do you hear, anecdotal evidence about the cultural changes within the business as well?
The most profound change is these types of programs being embraced by the board and the leadership.
What's the way that you get to those access to those organizations at the highest level to make sure that this type of thing can be adopted?
There are certain sectors that are required to have our service or have adopted it for a range of reasons. For example, qualifying for the provisions under the Corporations Act. And one of those elements is a strong recommendation to have an external report intake method or partner like Your Call. We have a group of people who work together in a range of risk areas that we want to make sure that they feel confident to speak up. The equation is fairly basic. the means to getting to that, there are motivators in different ways. We work with all sizes. We also work with a number of not-for-profits, being a B Corp, in our not-for-profit community program. But essentially, we provide all of our corporate consulting and services to not-for-profits, either for a concession investment or at no cost, pro bono, depending on the type of organisation and how they qualify for the program, to be able to help their people speak up. And that's a big part of our DNA.
With these really large organizations, what's the approach that you take in terms of, are you also doing education programs with them? Like, how do you really start to dismantle those things that are coming from the top?
Some are being told they need to do this from a risk consultant, a risk team, or a legal team. That's the price of doing business, and they now need to do this. Our ability to then be part of a tender program or arrangement of those organisations allows us to get cut through, irrespective if the leadership team are on board or not. That's step one if we're wanting to understand how do we actually get in front of organisations. The environmental movements and things like Me Too, etc., has placed the pressure bottom up pressure or expectations, and that's also with the changing of generational change at organisations are demanding these types of services. We're not a silver bullet. It takes a broad approach and a commitment from the organisation side. Without that commitment, it will fail. We have certain checks and balances in place. For example, our intermediary model, which is a forcing function. You cannot get rid of us playing the role between the individual and the employer. That allows us to essentially provide a sunlight test to the employer and also help the person gain trust. So that forcing function goes a long way. There are strong processes for the organisation to follow after they do so, to both protect the person, support them, and to run a substantial investigation to substantiate or unsubstantiate the allegation. I'm really pleased to say that most organisations we meet now are fully committed, and we're really pleased that the landscape has completely changed in that direction. It's a good thing. It's a good thing for our community and for Australians.
Thanks so much for joining me today, Nathan, and congratulations again on being nominated for Best for the World in Customers.
Thanks, Kira. It's an absolute privilege to be a certified B Corp, and even more so to be recognised in the top 5% of B Corps globally. So thanks so much.